to be covering off the City Ledger module within the Room Keys system. So when I go into the Operations menu, we're going to go to City Ledger. The shortcut key for that is F8. That will bring us into the City Ledger area. Now, I do want you to treat City Ledger like a separate computer, which is to say that once a guest is checked out of Room Key and the charges are direct billed over the City Ledger, they now belong in City Ledger world. So if we needed to do any adjustments, reversals, anything, it would have to be done over in the City Ledger side. So it's just like we're taking it out of one computer and into the other computer. So when we get into City Ledger, we're going to see all of our accounts that have any invoice balances owing. We're also going to see any accounts that have a payment credit. Now, I'll talk about payment credits near the end of this session. Some hotels will use them, some hotels will not. This account listing will show all the accounts in alphabetical order and if they have a balance. So if not, so see down below here how I have a show zero balance accounts. When I click on show zero balance accounts, now a couple of more accounts open up. So Avery Stationery has opened up, Coca-Cola has opened up, but typically we don't care about the accounts unless they owe us money. We also have our closed accounts, okay, and I'll talk about closing an account down the road. Okay. Now, I'm going to go to Reports in the upper left-hand corner, and we're going to go to the City Ledger Transaction Report. So some hotels will actually do the invoicing daily. So if I go to yesterday, the 23rd, click OK. This shows me that I had no front desk transfers yesterday. So that tells me that there was no invoices, no new invoices that I need to create. If your hotel does it weekly, so say I came in today, I went to Reports, City Ledger Transaction Report. I'm just going to pause for a moment. Marianne, unfortunately, I can't make it bigger on the screen. I'm only sharing a portion of my screen here. There should be a way for you to control the size of the app on your side or the window on your side. There should be a show full screen on the control panel there for the GoToMeeting. This is, unfortunately, I don't have control for your side to do it. If I actually show my full screen here, it'll actually be worse because you'll be seeing my full monitor, which makes it even smaller. So what I do, I only share the application, right? Oh, you found it. Perfect. Okay, thanks. Okay, so let's go to Reports, City Ledger Transaction Report. Okay, so if I was doing my invoicing weekly, I would run it for yesterday, the 23rd, right? We never do it for today because, you know, today hasn't passed yet. I would do the 17th to the 23rd. So what we're looking for is anyone that was transferred to the City Ledger within that time frame. And indeed, here we can see we have some front desk transfers. So here we have invoice 1070 for Res ID 1507 that was transferred, 1509. We have transfers to Talk World Discovery. Now, notice that the invoice ID is the same for these 5 reservations, whereas for Citrix, it's different invoices number. So this is the big difference here. And what it is if you have a group that is set up for direct billing, everyone within that group will go to the same invoice. If you have the company, so I'm going to exit out here. If you have the company under Operations Corporate Area, The corporate area is really known as corporate IT, corporate individual traveler. So even if I had 5 guys arriving today, checking out tomorrow, they would still do 5 separate invoices because they're in the corporate IT area. It's only when you have operations groups, an entire group like these Talk World Discovery ones, everyone with this group will go to the same invoice. So that's the difference between the two. So again, reports, City Ledger transaction report. I'm going to run it from the 17th till the 23rd. So what I would do, I would print this out because I need to go now print out all these invoices. Okay, I'm not going to print this out. I'm just going to write down the invoice IDs that I need. 1070, 1072 for Citrix. Then we have Talk 1069, and we have Warehouser that has 1071. Okay, so I'm going to close out of here. I'm then going to go to Citrix account. I'm going to go into View Details. When I go to View Details, that's going to open up my account. So I'm going to cover the tabs on here first. Under Account Statistics, here I can see their 30 to 60 or 30 to 59 days, 60 to 89, 90 day over, current. Their account credit limit and remaining credit balance. Last created invoice, last payment date, highest balance, average days to pay invoice. If I go to Account Details, here I can edit the account. Now, if you remember when we set up Citrix, or when we set up any corporate account, I showed you where you could build the corporate account and the direct bill account at the same time. So it's actually going to pull the information over from the corporate area. Now let's say the corporate area, see how we have Citrix and it's 464 Here Street. What if the billing address was different than the address of who we're contracting with? So here we actually have a billing address. And what I can do, and you can see I've used this for Citrix. So here's Citrix address, but Bob Loblaw, he's my contact for billing, right? So I've edited this. I've added a different billing account. I've ticked off Use Billing Address on statements. Okay, so that's only if it's different. I'm then going to go to Invoices. These are all the outstanding invoices that I have. And here we can see the 2 new invoices that we needed, 1070 and 1072. Now before we go into these, I'm just going to continue on over to Notes. So Notes only show up on this screen only. Okay, they do not show up on the invoices. They do not show up on the statements to the client. This strictly shows up on your side on this screen. So I've just put a note here. We can see it was created by my login on March 27th. This company usually will pay by check 2 weeks after getting invoices. So it's just any information you would put about this company. We can add new ones. So if I click New, put in a new message. We're going to save it. Note saved successfully. And again, it does a time date stamp on here with these notes. And then to delete a note, just click on delete and it will delete it out. Okay, let's go back to the Invoices tab. So again, we have 2 new invoices that we want to print out, 1070 and 1072. So right from this screen, you'll notice I can click on Madeline Thompson and click Print Invoice. I could then go to George Thompson and click Print Invoice. But in this case, I'm actually going to go into the invoice. So I click on 1072, click on Invoice Details down below. This now brings me into the invoice. So let's talk about what we see here. The invoice date was the date that the guest was transferred in the City Ledger. The age date, so this was done 3 days ago. The invoice name, whenever it's an individual corporate IT booking, the invoice name is going to be the name of the guest. If it's for a group, it would be the name of the group. Now we can change the invoice name if need be. Okay. PO number, so that stands for purchase order number. If you have a company that requires you to put a PO number on, enter it in here and it will show up. Click Save. I'm then going to go to the Transferred tab, click the little plus symbol, and here this is where we can see what was transferred over from room key was one room charge with tax. Payments, we'll get to payments a little bit later, and I'll come back and show you this. Charges, so if we need to charge anything directly to an invoice, so let's say that we forgot to bill for something, I can go to Post Charges, click on Transaction Code, and I can add a different charge on here. Invoice Log is anything we've done, so here we can see this was the transfer that was done, okay, the date that was done, and we can see the clerk who actually did the transfer. On the notes, now these notes again do not show up on the invoice or the statement, they strictly show on this screen, so I could do things like Bob said check 696 was in the mail. Okay, and again, it does a time date stamp of that. So it's really any conversations you may have had with your contact, anything you want to store in here. Okay, now to print out the invoice, I'm going to click Print Invoice in the lower left-hand corner. Room key will say, would you like to print the default invoice, yes or no? So for the first time, I'm going to say yes. This is what our invoice looks like. Okay, it'll have your hotel address up top, attention blah, blah, blah. That's my contact for billing address. Over on the right-hand side, the invoice number, name, date, and then that PO number that we had to put in shows up. The res ID, the room charges. Now, I want to be clear, if the guest stays for 3 nights, it will show all 3 nights of charges. It will not show it as a lump sum, right? Some of the older PMS systems used to do it as a lump sum, and then you'd have to send a copy of the invoice along with it. So the benefit here is we're going to give a detail so that you don't need to send a folio along with it. Now typically what I would do, I would go up to the little printer in the upper left-hand corner and I would print out 2 copies. One I would put in a folder, invoice to be paid, and the other one would be sent to the company. Now if you print this out and fold this attention blah 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 should fit in the window envelope. Okay. I'm going to close out of there. I would then go to George Thomas. I would print out his invoice. Okay, and again, I can do it right from this screen. Okay, so this one brings us to an area where we can create templates. So if I go to Change Template, the program that we use here is called Visual Basic. If you've never used Visual Basic before, please don't try to use this. If you move things to a certain area, the calculation stops working. So if you require a custom invoice or would like to change the invoice that we have, please let your trainer know directly, and either they or someone from support will help you with designing a new invoice. You can even have several templates, right? So say a specific company like Citrix, they need their invoice in just a certain way that they like, right? You can design a Citrix invoice that satisfies the Citrix company. I don't have many people that use this feature. I mean, really, our invoice, it's covering everything you would need. Now, the other thing you'll notice from this area, notice that you can email out. Okay? So as long as you're set up with the email settings, you can also email out invoices instead of setting them. Now, the only downside is we have 2 invoices that we need to send to Citrix. I can't send one email. I would have to go email 2 separate invoices. So if you had like, 15 invoices to send from that week, you're going to end up sending 15 emails to the person. So it's up to you if you want to use the email or continue to do the printing out and sending by mail or by fax. Okay, so we send out the invoices and we wait for payment. Now, let's go to our other invoice, and that was on Talk World Discovery. So I go to Talk. I'm going to go into View Details. I'm going to go to Invoices, and there we have the one invoice, 1069. I'm going to go into Invoice Details on this one. This one will look a little bit different. So this is 7 days old. If I go to the transferred line, here we have all 5 guests. If I click the little plus symbol, so Mark D, here's his room and tax, Ryan S, and so on. And then when I print this invoice, okay, it's going to show each individual guest that was with the group and the room charges or other charges they may have from their room. Okay, so the group one has everyone with the group on there. Okay, so I print that out, send that over to Talk. The last one was for Warehouser. Now, I could go to the Warehouser account, or I can go up to the search up above. And I took down the res ID or the invoice ID. Well, even if I did take the res ID, you can search by invoice ID, res ID, and PO number. So here, if I put invoice ID 1071, click OK. That brings me directly on the Open Invoices tab down below, right to that invoice for Rhonda Taylor or Rhonda Tyler. So then when I click on View Details, that brings me right into the invoice. And then once again, I would print that out and send that over to the company and wait for payment. Okay, so now let's say it's the end of the month. We're going to go into Operations, City Ledger. I'm going to go up to Reports, and we have the age balance report. So typically part of month end, we want to take a look at who owes us money and start to think about, do we send them notes or what are we doing here? So I'm going to do the age balance summary. Okay, so here I see all my companies. I can see where they are as far as 30, 60, 90 days. Okay, so Johnview here is in 60 days with $999. That might be raising a little bit of a red flag. Duggars is 60 days as well. Okay, most of mine are living in the current area. If I go to Reports, Age Balance, Detail, I like this one a little bit better. This one actually shows you the total, but then it shows each individual invoice is owed with that company instead of the total. Okay, I'm going to go back to Reports, and here we have a statement for selected accounts. So over the course of the month, we have been sending Citrix once a week. We've been sending them any new invoices. Now it's the end of the month. We want to send a friendly little reminder to Citrix of all the outstanding invoices we've already sent them. So here I can go to Reports, Statement for Selected Account. And now this shows all outstanding invoices that this company has and the age date of each, right, starting with the oldest ones down at the bottom here. And that gives their summary up top to show, hey, you have some people in 30 to 59. Okay, so this, again, we can print off and mail over to the company. If you want to email a statement, you need to go to the account. So I would go to Citrix, click on View Details, and then see down below where it says Email Statement, and then enter in the email address. So if I had an email address on file, it would have populated here. But if not, you can just enter it again. Okay, we're going to go back to reports. Now the City Ledger transaction report, I've already shown you that when we went to find out what the new invoices were. The transaction report, though, does show other transactions that happen within City Ledger. So payments, transfers, adjustments, reversals, all that stuff. And I'm going to show you this report again as we go through more of these functions. Payment details is a payment report. Again, I'm going to come back to that when we do some payments. Now, invoice listing. Whenever I go to the invoice listing report, it's only going to show me the companies that are currently showing on the screen. So if I want a true account listing report, I would also have to click Show Zero Balance Accounts. Once I see everyone, then I go to Reports, Account Listing. Now, this report shows all companies in the system, address, contact information. And really all this is for the brand new hotels that are switching over to room key. You guys may have like, I don't know, 150 direct bill accounts from your old system that you need to enter in. This is a good report to come double check after you're done, just to make sure you have them all in the system. Now the other report, account detail, this becomes a little bit more useful over time, because here we can see if any account is locked, or if any account was ever closed, and if it was ever opened again. Now I'll talk about closing and opening accounts a little bit later in this training. Okay, so now let's deal with some payments. So let's say that I get a check, and the check is from Warehouser. So I'm going to go to Warehouser, go into View Details. I'm going to go to Invoices. Okay, and let's say that Citrix sends me a check for $230.38 specifically for invoice 1058. So I'm going to go to invoice 1058. I'm going to go to invoice details. I'm going to go down below. I'm going to click on pay invoice. Transaction code, I click on the drop down. You can use anything. You can use MasterCard and put in the MasterCard number and all that as well. I'm going to do check. Now this check spelling is the Canadian spelling. So I'm going to do, actually I'm going to do 424, that's the check number, 230.38. And say they sent you a partial check, so $100, and said just apply that to the invoice, you can do partial checks as well. Okay, so I'm going to do 230.38. I'm going to click OK. Are you sure you wish to post this payment? Yes. So now the balance goes to 0 because we paid off this invoice. I'm going to go to the Payments tab now and see, we can see the payment that we just posted. And see this payment ID 087. All that is the first payment that you do in City Ledger will be 1, then 2, 3, 4. So it's sequential. This is the 87th payment that I have done in our City Ledger area. Okay, if I go to Invoice Log, right, we can start to see the changes here. So we transferred here, we added a PO number, we did a direct charge for Alex Pub. Okay, so everything that has happened to this reservation. Okay, when I close and go back to invoices, that invoice for Mr. Bartlett has now disappeared. In the upper left-hand corner, I have Show Zero Balance Invoices. Now I can see that Andrew Bartlett invoice again. And you can even print that back out and send that over to the company, right? So some hotels like to send it over so that they can, you know, show that the balance is zero on there. Okay, so now let's say that we receive a check from Acme. So I'm going to go into View Details, Invoices, and this invoice, or this check, is going to be, let's see, 194.35 plus 188.70. So they send me a check for $283.05 and say it's for invoice 1056 and 1059. So what I'm going to do, from the Invoice tab, instead of going directly into the invoices, from the Invoice tab here, I'm going to click on Pay Invoice. Would you like to post this payment to multiple invoices? Yes. I'm going to do transaction code, check again, put my check number, and the amount is going to be $283.05. 283.05. Click Next. Okay. And here, what I can do is I know it's for invoice 1056 and 1059, so I click on John Reed, Add Invoice. Click on Luke Bright, Add Invoice. So now we can see the payment amount is $283.05. Applied amount is $283.05. I click Post Payment. Are you sure you wish to post this payment? Yes. And now those two invoices disappear. Again, I can go back in and I can see any zero balance ones. Okay, let's go over to PepsiCo here. That's a bad example. Let's go to Citrix. Now, this situation in real life might be a little bit rare, but let's say that Citrix sends you a check for $1,500 and just says, apply this to our account, instead of paying for specific invoices. So here I go to Pay Invoice. Would you like to post this payment to multiple invoices? Yes. We're going to do check. Put in our check number. We're going to do the $1,500. We're going to click Next. Now, because it's not for a specific invoice, up top I'm going to click on Auto Apply. RoomKey will give you three choices. First in, first out is the most common. This is going to pay off the oldest invoices first. Last in, first out means it's going to pay out the newer invoices first, and then purchase order number. Okay, so I'm going to use first in, first out, which is the most common. I'm going to say OK. So what RoomKey says is, okay, I'm going to pay off invoice 1046, 1050, 1051. For invoice 1052, I'm only going to pay off 4144 and leave 637.89 on there. So down below, our payment amount is $1,500, applied amount is $1,500. Click on Post Payment. Are you sure you wish to post this payment? So now 3 of the invoices disappear, but one of the ones for Terry Flynn is still there. It'll show the partial payment that they did, and you might even want to print this out and send it back to the company showing, hey, I got your partial payment, but you still owe $637.89 for this one invoice. Okay, we're going to close out of here. So let's say I get a call from my company and they say, hey, we sent you check 424. What did you guys use it for? So here I can go into search and see where I can search by payment ID or check number. So if I go to payment ID, I'd put it in here, but if I went to check number, I'm going to put 424. Oops. 424 was one of the checks that I put in. I'm going to click OK. And that brings me to Weyerhaeuser payment ID 087, the check for $230.38, and it paid off one invoice. If I go to view details on this, it will show me that this was a payment that was taken on the 24th, which invoice it paid off, and who did it. We can even reverse this batch payment right from here as well. So maybe it was a mistake. And if I go to the log, it shows me the invoice here. Okay. And I can even click on Go to Payment Invoice, and it'll bring me directly back to that invoice that I paid off with that check. So you can print it out, send it to them again, and say, hey, this is what I used the check for. Okay, so it's nice that you're able to search by check in here in case you get calls from your companies. Okay, so let's talk. Excuse me. Okay, sorry about that. So here's a situation that can happen. Let's say that we sent a invoice to Warehouser for Daniel Murphy here. Okay, and we hear from our contact over at Warehouser, Daniel Murphy was not one of their agents or not one of their people. They have no idea who this is. So we go back, we do some investigating, we find an old fax, and the fax was actually from Citrix. So this guy got transferred to the wrong account. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Daniel Murphy, invoice 1073, and down below see where we have the transfer. So I'm going to click on transfer. Okay, so from account name Warehouser, transfer to account. If I click on the drop down here, I would then search either for the account name, the phone number, or the contact. Easiest way, I'm just going to search for Citrix. We're going to select, click OK. Are you sure you want to transfer the selected item? Yes. So now that invoice disappears from here. And if I go over to Citrix, go to View Details, go to Invoices, there I can see that invoice for Daniel Murphy. Now, I'm going to go into Invoice Details for Daniel Murphy. We're going to go to Transferred, click the little plus symbol. Here we can see that the rate is $68.25. Now let's say that this was the contracted rate for Warehouser, but the contracted rate for Citrix is actually $65, not $68. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on the first line and click Adjust Transferred, and I'm going to take off $3.25. I'm going to go back. I'm going to right-click. I'm going to do $3.25 again. Now, technically, I could go down to the bottom, click Post Charge, and post a negative $6.50 to room charge. But why I want to adjust each line, I'll show you in just a moment here. 325. So if I take off the 2, when I go to print out the invoice, see how it's now displaying as $65. Whereas if I had posted another $6.50 charge, it would have said, or a negative $6.50, it would have said 68, would have had the original amount, and then shown the negative. Now, if I go over to the charges, here I can see the 2 adjustments I made. And if you make a mistake, you can actually reverse an adjustment over in City Ledger. So I'm going to reverse. Are you sure you want to continue? Yes. Reason. Oops. and then we'll reverse the other one. Yes. Oops. You're about to reverse. Yes. And now if we go back to the transferred line, it's both back up to the 68.25. Now, what if this account, Citrix, has a higher rate? So maybe their rate is $70 instead of the 68.25. In that case, your only option would be either post a charge for the additional amount or adjust the whole thing off, 68.25, so I would adjust off both lines. There we go. And then I would go to post charge, choose room charge. In the reference, I'm going to put April 21, 2014, and the amount was supposed to be 70. I'm going to post charge again, choose room charge, 70, and here I'm going to put April 22, 2014, click OK. Okay, so that will no longer show up on the transferred side, that's going to show up on the charges side. Okay, if I print the invoice out, now it's only showing the $70. Now, the reason I put in the reference the date, notice the date over here is April 24th for both postings. And that's because if we're making this change today, well, the transaction date is today. But we want to reflect that it was for the 21st and 22nd. Now, if I go back up to the invoice date, it's still going to be, okay, for when we transferred it over. And then if we go to Invoice Log, everything that we just did starting from the top is going to all be in here. Okay, one other transfer that's available. I'm going to go back to Talk World Discovery. Now, in real life, this may not happen, but it's good to talk about. I'm going to go to this invoice that we have for the group. We're going to go into Invoice Details. Here we have 5 people with the group. Now, let's say that Talk calls us up and says, hey, we need you to take Frank K and get him off of this bill onto his own bill. So I can actually transfer an individual person off one invoice. So I'm going to click Transfer. I'm going to transfer to account Talk World Discovery. I could even transfer them to a different company if need be. That would be very rare. I can transfer to another existing invoice. Okay, the example I will give you is, let's say you had a Group A and a Group B in on the same days with Talk, and one guy got on the wrong bus or was supposed to be on the other bus or whatever, and the charge got messed up that way. You could transfer them over. In this case, I'm going to create a new invoice number. Click OK. Are you sure you want to transfer the selected item? Yes. So Frank K disappears from this invoice. I'm going to close. When I go back to the invoices, notice here, this is the original invoice, 1069, and now I have the Talk World Discovery one for the one guest of 8323. You'll also notice that the age date stuck, the 7 days. So even though we did this transfer today, it's not like it's going to make it back to 0. The only thing I would suggest, because now this one saved the same invoice name as the first one, I would go into invoice details and I would change it over to the guest that it's for. So Frank K, click save. I would print that out and send it over to Talk. So now I have Frank K separated out from the group. Okay, we're going to go into room key. And how do people get into the city ledger? Well, when we make a new reservation, and if they're with a corporate guest, if they're in for 3 nights, we know that the room and tax is going to sit on Folio 8 for those 3 nights. And then upon checkout, the room and tax is going to be transferred over to the city ledger. Now we have a guest in house, Terry Flynn. Terry Flynn checked in on January 28th and is checking out on April 28th. So they're in for 3 months. If we had left this till the end, they would have had 3 months worth of transactions on there. Okay? Because remember, the direct billing happens upon checkout. So that could amount to, say, I don't know, $10,000 or $15,000 over the 3-month period. So what some hotels will do is they'll actually check the guest in and check the guest out weekly. And certainly you can do that if you choose. But we do have another option here. This guest here, we have the room and taxes on Folio 8. And see how we have the City Ledger transfer button. This will allow me to transfer charges mid-stay or after each week. Now, I've actually already used this function, and all these postings from January 28th, February, these are all gone. And the way I can tell is, let's go to Folio 8 only. You'll notice as I'm scrolling through the room charges here, see how the little move button is grayed out. And the reason the move button is grayed out is these actually don't exist here anymore. They've already been transferred to City Ledger. And even if I right-click on one, notice that reverse and adjust are also gone. Right? And that's because these no longer exist. They're over in the City Ledger. So if I scroll down, there we go. Notice on the one for April 11th, see how I have moved back? And if I right-click, reverse and adjust are there. And here we can see, here's the City Ledger transfers I've already done. So to use that function, technically after 7 days, after a week, I would come in here and I would use this function. But even if you're a little bit late, like I am today, I can go to City Ledger Transfer. Okay, I'm going to show just Folio 8. And here we go. Here we have the room charges. Okay, so again, I should have done this, back when we had only a week's worth. So now what I'm going to have to count. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right, because we told them that we would bill them weekly. Okay, here I have transfer to Citrix, invoice selection, create new invoice. We're going to transfer. Transaction successfully transferred. Okay. Then I'm going to do it again. I'm going to go to Folio 8. Now see how we're up to April 15th. So once you transfer it, they're no longer going to show up in here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Transfer. Okay. And now we should only be left with 3, I think, in there. Yeah, only 3. So then we would wait for another 4 days to post and use that. Now, the reason some people don't like this because, again, all the charges do stay on here, and it's hard to sometimes tell that they have been transferred off. But again, do we really care if we can tell? Because by using the City Ledger transfer, it's not going to allow you to transfer two, right? Or transfer the same one twice. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, now those transfers that I just today, if you make a mistake and you accidentally do a transfer, you can right-click on the transfer and see where it says undo transfer. The undo transfer can only be used the same day that you did the transfer or the checkout. If it goes to the next day, it now belongs in City Ledger world. You would actually have to go to City Ledger, and your choice is you go to City Ledger, reverse all the room charges off there, come back to the guest account and repost them. Or the option is that you just go to City Ledger, where the room charges are, and then just take the payment or whatever over there from the guest, if that's what was supposed to happen and you accidentally transferred. Okay, so if you catch it in the same day, you can move it back. Otherwise, it's reversing and reposting. Okay, let's go back over to City Ledger. Okay, and we're going to talk about credits. So I'm going to go to Show Zero Balance Accounts, and we're going to go to Mosier Painting. So Mosier Painting has $0. I'm going to go into View Details. Okay, now if you're using City Ledger for groups, and you have a specific City Ledger account for a group, you can post a credit for that group if they were to prepay. Or let's say the company sends you a check for $5,000 ahead of time and says, here's $5,000, you can just use this for our future reservations as they come in. Okay, it's hard enough to get people to pay after, let alone get them to prepay, but it could happen. So here I'm going to go to Apply Credit to Account. We're going to do a check number, payment amount, $5,000, okay. Are you sure you wish to post this payment as a credit to the account? Yes. Okay, so now our Mosier Painting is going to show up on our screen with a $5,000 credit. Now, this is extremely important to understand. A payment credit within the City Ledger does not show on your advanced deposits. It actually affects the overall balance of your direct bill. So if I look down at the bottom, see how my total City Ledger balance is negative $243? That means I actually have a credit balance of $247 overall in my City Ledger. So you got to be very careful, because sometimes when people look at the overall amount and say, oh, well, we actually have a credit, I'm not worried. Well, yeah, but there's a lot of other accounts that still owe us money. Okay, so just be careful that if you are doing credits that you're not just using the overall total. Now, here we have that Mosier Painting credit in there, and then it will be used over time. When a guest is checked out or you transfer over to City Ledger, it does not automatically apply the credit. So for instance, here's Boyd Construction. Boyd Construction, I'm going to go into View Details. And here they have the credit of 332504. If I go to Invoices, we also have an outstanding invoice for $98.79. So why Roomkey won't automatically apply the credit is we don't want Roomkey to assume that that's what you want to do. Maybe they're going to send you a different check or maybe a different credit card for this guy. So if you want to use a credit to pay off an invoice, you would go to the invoice that is owing, go into Invoice Details, I'm going to click on Pay Invoice, and Roomkey will say there is a $3,325.04 of credit remaining for account Boyd Construction. Would you like to use the credits to pay this invoice? If you were going to do a different method of payment, you would say no. But if you were going to use this, we say yes. Okay, so payment amount, $98.79 from account credit. Okay. Are you sure you wish to post this payment? Yes. Okay, so now the total balance goes to 0. I'm going to close out. And now watch, the invoice is gone and our payment credit went down. If I go back into view details, I'm going to go to the credits tab here. See how it shows me that this credit originally was $5,000 that they sent back in January. So far, this credit has been used to pay off 7 invoices. I can go to payment details, and I can see the invoices that have been paid off thus far from that credit. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to our reports, payment details. I'm going to go back to, I'm going to look at today. So here, this will show me payments that were done today. But as well, if I go back up to the top, account credits, as of April 24th, the account credit is going to stay on this report until it's used. So even on a day that you don't have any payments, you would still have a report that shows the account credits on these 2 accounts. It's just a running balance, so you know at any given time if an account has a credit. Okay. When it's used, so see here it's payment check, but the Boyd construction one, the one I just did, it's check, payment from account credit check. Okay, so it flags that this was used for an account credit. Okay, so let's say I have an account I am unhappy with. Oops. Operations, City Ledger. Okay, so it's Duggars. So Duggars owes me $555. And these guys are in 60 to 89 past due. I've been bugging them, trying to get the money from them. They keep on dodging me. So at this point, I'm going to tell them that we're no longer going to allow them to have any reservations that have direct billing. Now, I first want to see, well, do they have any existing reservations? So I click on the account and go up top and click View Account Link Status. There are no links for this selected account, so we're good. Now I'm going to go over to Citrix for a moment because I know they have some. I'm going to go to View Account Link Status, and here it shows me that Citrix is tied to a corporate account, and there is one reservation out there. And if I click Print, I can see it's actually for Terry Flynn. So if you're going to take away direct billing privileges from a company, you got to see if there's already an existing reservation, because are you going to honor that? Are you not going to honor that? What are you going to do for that billing? Because Duggars doesn't have any reservations, I'm going to go up top. I'm going to lock the account. Locking the account stops people from being able to charge into this account, even accidentally. You'll notice that it highlights it orange in here and puts a little padlock on the end. If I go into View Details as well for the account, right, stays orange. Again, it has a little padlock here. Okay, so now a couple of weeks pass, and we find out that Duggars has gone bankrupt. We are not going to see any money from them. So I'm going to go into City Ledger. I actually want to close this account. Now, if I go to Duggars, and up top I click on Close Account, are you sure you want to close this select account? Yes. Room key is going to say the following needs to be addressed before the account can be closed. Account has a balance of $555. So you can't close an account if it has a balance. We got to decide what are we going to do with that outstanding balance. So I'm going to go into View Details. I'm going to go to Invoices. They only have one outstanding invoice. So we'll go to Invoice Details. I'm going to click on Pay Invoice, Transaction Code, and I have a bad debt payment code. Okay? Now the bad debt payment code, we don't automatically put that in your system because some hotels will deal with outstanding invoices in a different way. But if you would like a bad debt, or some people call it write-off, whatever you want to call it, payment method, just let your trainer know or let us know, or even like in a year from now, say you need it and you need us to put it in, just let us know. Okay. So I'm going to do bad debt. We're going to select 555. Okay. Are you sure you wish to post this payment? Yes. Our balance is 0. So now we're going to go and we're going to close the account. Are you sure you want to close the selected account? Yes. And really, all closing it does is, when I go to show zero balance accounts, if I had zeroed it out and left it on here, it would constantly be showing up. But if these guys are gone out of business, I don't even want to see them here. So that just brings them over to this close side where I can see them. You'll notice that we have an open account. So say a company gets in such a bad state with you that you do close them, but then they make good, they make payments, they give credit cards, you can reopen an account down the road as well. Okay, so that is it for City Ledger. So I'm going to go over to the question area. And if you guys don't have any questions, please feel free to dismiss yourself, or if you want to stick around, because I do have a couple of questions in here. If you have multiple reservations direct billed for the same guest, can you transfer all the invoice to just one before sending for payment? So again, if they're set up as a group, they're all automatically going to go to the same invoice. But if they're under the corporate area and you have two guys in the same day, right, so two reservations under John Smith that's with Citrix, Roomkey technically will want you to settle it to two separate invoices, but yes, you can transfer it then into the one of the invoices, so it's all on one. Okay, you can even use that City Ledger transfer again. Let's go back to Terry Flynn. So what you could do is check out the first guy, find out the invoice ID. Then go to the second guy, use the City Ledger transfer instead, and choose the invoice that he was just transferred to. Transfer all the chart, so add everything, transfer it over, and then check the guy out. Or just, again, check them both over to City Ledger and then combine it over there. Will a closed account company be able to make a new reservation at all? Well, it depends on what you want to do. I mean, if I go back into the corporate area, so say, for example, Acme Corporation. Say it was Acme and I closed their City Ledger account. So what I would do is I would then change the folio over to one and put all charges to the individual. Or what you can do is take this account that has the direct billing, modify, inactivate it. Then create a new Acme one. With all the information, and I put no DB, all charges to individual. So in this case, we're going to make them send in a credit card or give the guest credit card at the time of making a booking. We're not going to allow for direct billing anymore. But we will still want to track the business that Acme does, or we still want to give them a special rate or whatever, right? But we're just taking away those privileges. Okay, and I don't have any other questions in there right now. I'm going to stay on the line for a moment. I'm actually going to stop the recording for today.